Decide what you want, decide what you are willing to exchange for it, and establish your priorities right. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is the Economic Technological Cooperation Agreement known as ETCA, which is to be signed with the Government of India. What are the negatives, what are the positives, and how is it going to affect you seated at home? How is it going to affect the undergraduates in Sri Lanka? How is it going to affect the professionals in Sri Lanka? And how is it going to affect the citizens of Sri Lanka? To discuss all this and more, we brought into our studios today 5 eminent personalities to discuss the negatives, the positives, as well as how best we should move forward. Let me introduce them to you. Let's start off with the President of the Government Medical Officers Association, Dr. Anuruddha Padhania. Very good evening to you and welcome to the show, Dr. Padhania.
Good evening.
Also joining us this evening is no stranger to Face the Nation, that is Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us this evening. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Kapila Pereira, President, Society of IT Professionals. Nice to have you on board as well, Kapila. Joining us this evening is Professor Sirmala Beratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo. Nice to have you again, Professor, on the show. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Samantha Kumarasinghe, Patron, Ceylon National Chamber of Industries. Nice to have you on board as well. Let's start off tonight's show with Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. What exactly is ETCA, Dr. Jayawardena, and is it good? Is it bad? Your time starts now.
Well, Samir, you are asking 3 questions. Now, what is ETCA means that the government of Sri Lanka is planning to sign an agreement with India, opening up economic and technological cooperation with that big country, and it's actually a follow-up of the agreement which it had signed earlier in 1998, covering only the visible trades, which you call the merchandise trade, and the experiences which the country had got through that has encouraged the government, both governments, to go for a wider agreement, and the present ETCA is the outcome of that. And whether it is good or bad will depend on how we have got the terms and conditions of ETCA and the particular economic situation we are faced in the country today, and how it is going to be implemented by both governments. There are 3 factors that would affect the success or failure of ETCA. Now, if we examine the present economic situation, Samir, we are in a serious economic crisis. That crisis is manifested more strongly in the case of the country's external sector, because our exports have been not rising at the rate of the GDP of the country for about 10 years. Imports are ballooning and we have a very wide trade deficit. With that, all the foreign reserves that we had accumulated are now declining, and our currency is under pressure for depreciation. And already you would have noted, 1 year ago a dollar was traded for 131 rupees and now it is traded for more than 147 rupees. So currency is subject to depreciation, and therefore the country is in a severe external crisis, and that is why in May, International Monetary Fund had to come to Sri Lanka. They had to bail out the country, bail out the economy. Sri Lanka had denied that we had an external sector crisis for long. Both governments, the current government as well as the government that was defeated in January last year, they had denied that we had a crisis. But of course, when the crisis had hit the doorstep and they could not any longer postpone it, they had to accept it, and therefore they had to go for a bailout package with the International Monetary Fund. So in order to rescue the country, the government thinks that the way out is for us to promote exports. To promote export, they think we have a big market to the north of Sri Lanka, and that market has to be exploited. And that is why the country is going to have this bilateral trade agreement with India, so that we will be able to expand our trade. So that's the objective.
At the end of the day, Dr. Vijayawardena, in terms of signing this agreement, now you are a civil rights activist, a civil society activist. Have you seen the content of this agreement?
No, nobody knows, because that's why it's very secretive. In fact, Samir will have to bring it to the notice of the public here today, because very recently we passed in Parliament a Right to Information Act. In the Right to Information Act, one of the exempted subjects is the signing of trade agreements. If anybody wants to find out the trade agreement, they have to wait for 10 years. Only after the lapse of 10 years time they can get the information. So it has been very secretive. Nobody knows the contents. All we know is what has been pronounced by various political authorities of the country from time to time, which are again not consistent with each other. So therefore the public as well as the professional associates of the country are now completely in the dark.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. I now move my attention to Professor Sirimala Abiratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo. Professor, EDCA, good, bad, should we sign it or should we not sign it? Your time starts now.
I don't have a single word answer to that question. I can't say it is bad or good. If I say that, actually it will be misleading and also it will be misquoted sometimes. Let me put it in this way. I need to have a detailed answer to that question. I know the benefits of a bigger market, so that's why we are always looking for the international market. I also know the benefits of competition, and at the same time I know the bad effects of monopoly situations and also the bad effects of smaller market. So having said that, I am actually in favor of an open economy. That means we have to open the economy. But in that context, if we take this kind of agreements, there are several agreements line up now after these. It's like we have a bigger problem at home, and external balance problem as well as internal balance problem, and on the top of that actually we have a business sector issue, and the economic environment, the policy environment is not conducive to generate investment and foreign direct investment. So we have a set of problems at home, and these are not problems that emerge suddenly, but we have been developing these problems over the years. And now the way out of these problems, we haven't touched any of these things actually in a serious way, and we haven't touched our reform process in a serious way. But we think that we can get out of all these problems when we have agreements with the other countries. It is like we are inviting others to come and solve our problems at home. I don't think it is going to work. And let me start with the previous agreement with India for free trade agreement that was made effective after 2000, and we have experience about 15 years. What was the argument on our side? There is a bigger market out there, 1 billion, over 1 billion people. So that is big market, we can enter into that market. But actually we have failed to enter into that market for whatever the reasons. So that today we are experiencing huge trade deficits, growing trade deficit. We don't mind about trade deficit with individual countries, but we haven't succeeded in penetrating into that market. So that if we have another agreement also with some other countries coming up after that, and I don't think we are going to get out of our internal problems unless we focus first on our internal problem. This is like putting the cart before the horse.
Professor, Dr. Vijayawardena pointed out that the present economic situation also should be taken into account. He brought in three folds and said that the present economic situation also should be taken into account when signing agreements of this sort. At the end of the day, the government's objective should be to broaden the economic scope of Sri Lanka and ensure that we get money. We have the necessary funds to develop the country at the end of the day. However, the Ministry of Finance and even the Central Bank of Sri Lanka are very silent on this matter. You have the Minister of International Trade really pushing this through. Why is that?
I don't have any good reasons to argue either for against or for that kind of positions, because I don't have inside information that much. But my point is actually we are not serious about having policy reforms at home. So we are faced with a serious external balance problem, and our import expenditure is double the export income, having a trade deficit like that. So we haven't touched upon these kind of important issues, and we are actually we are going hand in hand in these problems, and so that I don't think we have a way out without reforming, without undertaking bold and purposive and deliberate reform process at home, and after that we can think of the agreements.
Thank you very much, Professor Sirimala Beratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo. Before moving on to Mr. Kapila Pereira, I want to quickly drag my attention to Dr. W. Jayawardena. Doctor, you were attached to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Are you surprised that the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and even the Ministry of Finance is quite silent on this particular agreement in question?
Case of the Central Bank is different, Samir, because Central Bank is simply an impartial spectator. It cannot take a policy ownership in this case. What it would do is it would analyze the situation and it will submit confidential reports to the government. And
do
also
you think that they have already done it in terms of?
I don't know. I have no idea. But of course, I expected the Central Bank to write at least an article on the ETCA in the annual report that was published 3 months ago. There was no such thing published there. So they have been silent. But the Ministry of Finance has a direct role, as you say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. W. Jayawardena, a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. I now move my attention to Mr. Kapila Pereira, President of the Society for IT Professionals. Kapila, IT professionals are really concerned about ETCA. Most of the IT professionals are opposing this move. Why? And what is the position of your organization? Are you for or against it?
We are directly against ETCA.
And why?
First we should take how our IT industry in Sri Lanka today. So if you think about that one, we have a very quality IT professionals in here. We can prove that with the software that we are supporting today. For example, Sri Lankans support eBay. You all have heard about that one. And when take the Expedia, the software for bookings, hotels and all the airlines and everything. So this is supported by Sri Lankan software engineers. Then London Stock Exchange, the biggest one. So we do support that one. And if you take Three Gorges Dam in China, one of the biggest dams, so we are supporting that. So you can take a lot of even aviation and defense in other areas, Emirates, and all these software sectors are supported by Sri Lankan ICT professionals. Then do we need such expertise from India? No, it is not.
But the argument is, Kapila, that we don't have the necessary knowledge or the technical know-how
to take Sri Lanka to the next level. IT industry is not a hidden industry. It is not a hidden knowledge. Not like nuclear or something like that, or it is not like defense or something. So there's nothing is hidden. There might be business secrets, and those are even if we go for free trade agreement, still those would be hidden for those companies only, and it will not come to us. In that case, we can easily take that knowledge from the universities, from the reading material.
So we're talking about a country where a 17-year-old hacked into the president's official website as well. So We have the technical know-how. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it goes beyond that one. So hacking, yeah. One thing is that if someone is quoted after hacking, then it is not he's not one of the best hackers. But maybe there are hackers in Sri Lanka who had never been caught. So that's the thing.
In terms of job opportunities, is there a dire need for more IT professionals in Sri Lanka? Does our universities produce them?
Per year, at the present, we produce about 8,000 ICT professionals.
Is that
usual
enough?
requirement is 7,000, around 7,000. So there is a 1,000 excess of IT professionals.
When we look at Sri Lanka's development plan, Kapila, in the next few years, you see the financial city coming up in a few years from now. So you need to have a lot of IT professionals.
Yeah,
in the
then
country.
we should develop more universities, and we should bring these things to our universities. And that what we should do. We shouldn't try to bring people from India and give jobs to them, because we have a lot of people who are not doing a nice job as a IT professional. So we should open that opportunity to our fellow citizens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapila Pereira, President of the Society for IT Professionals. I now move my attention to Mr. Samantha Kumar Singha, Patron Ceylon Chamber of Industries. Nice to have you on board today, Mr. Kumar Singha. Now we speak of a lot of agreements with India. We speak of a comprehensive economic partnership agreement which was quite extensively discussed in the recent times. And now we're talking about the Indo-Lanka Economic and Technology Agreement as well. Is SEPA coming in the guise of EDCA, or is EDCA a fresh agreement?
I think what happened was there was a lot of criticism against SEPA during the past regime when it was about to be signed in 2008. The industry and professionals got together and made representation to the former president, and he did not sign SEPA in 2008. Then it came up again around 2012, but that time also it was opposed by the many parties, so that it slowly went under the carpet. But immediately after the government change, again this matter came with the last visit of Indian Prime Minister. So they started it, and immediately after that there was a lot of protests against the same SEPA. Then the government, what the new government did was they changed the name, and they came out with the new one called EDCA. So I think it is, whether it is called EDCA or SEPA, more or less the same. There is not much of a difference, because all sectors are there that were in SEPA are in EDCA. And
no, it's not the same. You have the IT and the shipyard services only in the agreement in question. So not all sectors are incorporated in EDCA.
That is the basic problem here is when it comes to services. We have signed GATS agreement in 1994 and given Sri Lanka's commitments. Through Sri Lanka's commitments to GATS, we have opened many sectors. And when we sign another trading services agreement under WTO regulations, you cannot give anything less than what we have given to GATS. So that's a technical problem. And with that, though the government and some ministers say that in certain places that they have said, okay, we are not going to open mode 4, that means free movement of natural persons, under EDCA, it is technically not possible, because we have already given that under GATS. And you cannot sign, according to the WTO regulations, you cannot sign another bilateral or regional agreement giving anything less than what we have given to GATS. Then it is not accepted by them as an agreement.
However, Mr. Kumar Singh, correct me if I'm wrong, whatever agreements we sign with any international body, when it comes to the local judiciary, it is not really applicable. you can always define it based on the country's constitution concern, isn't it?
No, then again there is an issue, because if you take WTO regulations, any dispute settlement has to be settled through the WTO regulations, and there is a dispute settlement mechanism within the WTO. But as soon as we sign a separate agreement, a bilateral agreement or a regional agreement, that particular safety is taken away from us.
So is it good or bad?
It is bad, because now, say for instance, then there is something called arbitration. Now there is no way of going to WTO to get your problems resolved. You have to go to arbitration. Arbitration is something that is very, very costly for Sri Lanka. We cannot afford. If you to look at the global picture, these arbitration judges are basically consultants in some multinational companies, because they are paid very highly paid professionals, and most of the time their decisions are in favor of bigger countries who know how to spend money, how to handle this, because a country like India knows very well to do arbitration. Now, if you go back to our this oil hedging issue, there was a Supreme Court judgment given in Sri Lanka that the particular compensation should not be paid by the Sri Lankan government. But then subsequently they went to arbitration. When arbitrators ruled that Sri Lankan Supreme Court has no judgment over, jurisdiction over that particular agreement. So therefore we had to pay. We are paying still. It's a huge amount of money.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samantakumar Singh, patron of this Lawn Chamber of Industries. Thank you very much for joining us and for your thoughts in the first round. I now move my attention to Dr. Anuruddha Padania, President of the Government Medical Officers Association. Dr. Padania, nice to have you on board. Because you are a medical doctor, I'm going to pose a question to you based on your learning as well. How healthy is EDCA to Sri Lanka?
Thank you very much, and I think you very clearly identified me. I am a medical doctor, I am a neurologist. So simply I am not an economist. So I am a layman from the economic point of view, like you all. So therefore, what we looked at is what the rationale behind signing trade agreements. So we went into the basics of doing business between two personnel, two organizations, or up to a level of countries. What we could gather is the countries, when they are doing trading or business, that is done under unilateral agreements, under bilateral agreements, and or multilateral agreements, so on and so forth. So what we basically aimed at is whether answer to your question, whether it is good or bad or somewhere in between, is the question. So how to rule out that is you have to have a problem-based oriented approach. So based on that, we started looking into almost all facts. So after that, having said that, we formulated a kind of we evaluated the approach to the signing trade agreements by Sri Lanka, going into the history and the evolution of trade agreements in Sri Lanka, and we tried to propose a new approach which we call the rational approach to trade agreement. We initially wrote to the government. Today's government is both parties. So we wrote to both parties, the President himself and to the Prime Minister and to the Minister of International Trade, that is Honorable Malik Samaravikrama. And we had official discussions with them, and ultimately we proposed a rational approach in 5 steps. Now, before going to that, we evaluated the current trade agreement, as Mr. Vijayavardhana pointed out. This is the history of trade agreements in Sri Lanka, and you can see it was highlighted that the first trade agreement signed with India was this goods trade agreement. You can do trading either in goods or services. Now we are talking about the services. And the goods trading, it was started, signed in 1998, and which came into effect in 2000, and it is going for last 16 years. And you can see the trade balance is escalating. It was highlighted by others, and without any review process. So what we could gather is, in the process of signing trade agreements, they haven't given a fairly comprehensive approach, studied approach or scientific approach to this signing trade agreements. Basically, it was done in a hidden manner, as it was highlighted earlier, without transparency, without even telling to the cabinet or the parliament, and without telling the countrymen what benefits we are going to get at the end of the day, in a blind manner. So what we have proposed is a mechanism where we are going to suggest to you all in time to come with 5-step approach. And last point what I want to raise is, since we are laymen, as I explained myself, we had the opportunity of meeting the WTO chief, Mr. Dr. Hamid Mahmood, on our approach, which was endorsed by him personally, and we emailed him and we got his concurrence that the approach we propose through this booklet and otherwise.
Dr. Baldwin, I have a question to you before wrapping up. You say that you are a layman and you all are medical doctors.
Yeah.
Then how do you all come with a rational approach to agreements?
Correct.
I'm quite surprised and perplexed.
No, what I am telling is we don't have academic credentials as economists.
So how can you propose something to a government without knowing
with
the economic
common
background
sense?
to it?
No, what we could gather is simply the countries going for a trading without studying. Nobody will, that is common sense, nobody will go for trading or business without studying. And therefore we propose this 5-step approach, and which was endorsed by the WTO. This is what we want to tell. So ideally this should have done by the people who are holding authority on this, which they haven't done. I will go into details, and ultimately it was endorsed.
Dr. Pardania, before opening the floor for questions from the journalist, one more question to you. Do you think Sri Lanka has the right medical requirements, the right kind of health requirements needed for patients in this region?
Yeah, it's nowhere in the world you have optimum health sector. Even America I have visited, there are Obamacare people and them who are evaluating. Nowhere you get an optimum health
How do you grade
system.
Sri Lanka's health sector?
Now they are aiming at few trends. One is the cost effectiveness and the quality and the equity.
How is the quality?
Sri Lankan health quality, when you scale it up in the parameters, we are very high. With regard to the cost effectiveness, if we study the Kaiser Permanente Obamacare, they analyze world one of the best cost effective health system. That is with regard to the quality. And then again the equity. You can't have some people well looked after, whereas the peripheral or the people who are not approachable to this are not looked after. So the equitable care delivery, quality health with equitable care delivery, Sri Lanka is commendable. Kind of, we have, I am not saying we are optimum, I said there are no optimum healthcare systems. Our healthcare system
Dr. Pardania,
is
my second question to you is, if that is the case, if you're saying that Sri Lanka has a very good health sector, why is it that ministers, speakers always rush into other countries to seek medical attention? Because they don't trust you?
I think that question had to be asked from them. I think very few politicians are going out for their care. But if you analyze the past, there are a lot of even the affluent people going abroad for their care, but that has reduced. Now I have some patients who come to me today and they go for a second opinion to Singapore, UK tomorrow, and they come back and say what we are delivering is good. So that is why we are, to be honest, now we are not in a kind of a frog in the well attitude. All our consultants, there is a legal and academic obligation to be trained minimum 2 years in a center of excellence worldwide to bring the knowledge, attitude and the skills to this country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anuradha Pardania, President, Government Medical Officers Association. I had to ask that question, Dr. Pardania, because it has always been lingering in my head. If I don't pose it, then I won't be able to even conduct this program here onwards. So I somewhat got the answer for it. So let me open the floor for questions. On to my right is Nadir Majid. On to my immediate left is Sonali Vanagabadge, who is also an attorney at law. Also joining us this evening is Chaturanga Porachi. So let's start off with Sonali.
Thanks, Sham. Professor, my first question is to you. Now, with regard to ETCA, there are varying political agendas. There are some parties with an apolitical stance. There are also some groups who are seeking a difference in the power balance. How does one then evaluate the benefits of ETCA and sort of look at it in terms of increasing FDIs for the country. That is how the government is proposing to sell this agreement to the people. How do we do this then?
There have been arguments to say that when we have agreements like this with the other countries, especially with big countries and fast-growing countries, then there will be investors here who can invest, and then they go looking for those markets in big countries, and that's the argument. But if we look at our performance over the last 10-20 years, actually we had our last policy reform process, the major policy reform process about 25 years ago. And I start with that point actually. And over the last 25 years, we haven't done anything substantial to improve our policy environment, to improve our business environment. And in that context, if we are aiming at attracting foreign direct investment through ETCA or any other agreement, and I think that's going to be a futile attempt. The reason is, in fact, I must also say that this is the time that the world in the world economy there is a recession, long-term recession, and the capital flow out from those advanced countries in whenever there is a recession. So in the recession there is capital outflows, and so that we have a better position. We are in a better position to attract that FDI, but up to now we were unable to attract even $1 billion a year, which is a very, very small, very meager, tiny amount as far as the other countries in the region are concerned. Now, we have the assumption that when we go for agreements with India or China, investors will come to this country and invest here because they are looking for those markets in their country.
Professor, let me just stop you right there. But don't you agree that the government is making unsubstantiated statements by saying signing ETCA will lead to job generation and increasing of FDIs? How does the government say it without showing a clear roadmap? If I am a graduate from the Morato University and I've done IT and I'm earning 250,000 rupees a month, how do I know that after signing ETCA, an Indian IT software engineer will come to Sri Lanka and do the exact same job for 50,000 a month, and that I'll lose my job?
Yes, let me answer that question also. Now, the first part of the question is about FDI, right? So it's an assumption still, and whether FDI come here or not, we don't know. But our past experience have shown that it is not. I said that at the beginning that we are actually know the benefits of competition, and I don't know the sectors exactly which sector, IT sector or the medical sector, which has shortage, which has the oversupply, which has better paying jobs, and in fact in most of the professional sectors I think that they need competition in a broad sense, because competition will improve the quality, so that and that also point to another issue actually. If we are producing adequate IT professionals as well as doctors, medical doctors, actually to my understanding, as far as I know, many of them actually are looking for job opportunities outside the country. And still it is point to the fact that we don't have better employment opportunities here in this country for those IT graduates and for those medical graduates, because they are looking for jobs outside the country. So we know that from housemaids to very high skilled professional jobs, people are still looking for outside jobs, which means actually we don't have that many opportunities in this country, and we are going to create opportunities by going through implementing this kind of agreement, so which is a futile attempt in that sense as well. But if you are earning 250,000 as an IT graduate, right, and if you want to protect your monopoly status, yes, of course you are right. As a person, I would argue for that as well. But as an economy, as a society, as a nation, it is not the right approach.
Dr. Padini, one question to you now. When you were answering Shami's lingering question, you said that there is a rule legally as well for medical professionals to receive expertise from abroad, international expertise. However, am I right in saying that when it comes to IT professionals and other services that are listed in ETCA, you're being narrow-minded in saying that they should not come to Sri Lanka and share their international expertise?
No, the question is not clear. What I said is that Sri Lanka, as a policy, all our consultants in the training, once you do a MBBS, if you want to be a specialist, through that process you have a Sri Lanka. Early it was a full training abroad, but now there is a Sri Lankan training, and there is a compulsory obligation that anybody should bring some know-how from abroad to this country. So that mechanism is bringing the knowledge, skills and attitudes to the country. So similarly, when you are going to impart that kind of knowledge, skills and attitude, you have to identify the correct partner. Now we have currently about 2,000 consultants in the country, and when we are going to select by a very stringent process a center of excellence, none of these 2,000 out of at least single person had go to India to bring knowledge, skills or attitudes. I am not letting down India, but we have better places to bring knowledge, skills and attitudes to this country. That's what I pointed out.
Yes, but my question again is, now when we reach free trade agreements with, for example, the free trade agreement we are in discussion right now, isn't there international expertise that is being shared amongst these two countries? Is that not true? Yes. True.
That's what I said. We have to have a rational approach. Now, number one, what we are having at the moment is a free trade agreement with India. I am not anti-India. No, I am not asking you to completely ignore India. If there are goods in India, you have to go for it. But it had to be a rational approach. It had to be a studied approach. Now, in that context, the current experience with the goods agreement is every day it's getting, the trade balance is going wider and wider. Ultimately, we are losing. Losing in the sense, losing beyond 90%, and which was endorsed by everybody, and according to the central bank details, it's there. Various people can explain. And at the same time period, from 2000 to 2006, our exports to other countries are going up. So therefore, by signing a trade agreement, we are relatively losing and we are escalating the loss. And therefore, what we are saying is we have to have a studied approach to see why we are losing. And Sri Lanka, and if you do business, the usual thing is we have a check balance almost at least every day, or at least once a week, or once a month, or once in 3 months, at least annually. For last 16 years, this is being carried on without at least a review. So 2003, there had been one review. The recommendations were not implemented. So because of that, what we could find through our literature survey was the Colombo University has analyzed why we are losing. And when we pointed out these facts to the Trade Ministry, the Minister, Honorable Malik Samarasinghe, he said, he said, suggested immediately look into these aspects and to rectify that.
Dr. Padhan, I want to just interrupt you for a second here and move my attention to Dr. W. Jayawardena. Doctor, now, the service sector accounts for nearly 60% of the GDP in Sri Lanka at the moment. So such trade agreements are becoming very common, not only in Sri Lanka, but elsewhere as well, elsewhere in the world. Why not have ETCA in Sri Lanka if that is the case? There is no problem. Doesn't seem that it's going to disrupt the apple cart way too much, or the way that you don't want it to. It's fine. It seems okay. Isn't it, Doctor? Dr. Vijayawardena? What is your thought on this?
Well, no, what I can say is this, now Dr. Padhani has produced these statistics which have been published by the central bank. Of course, the objective of signing a trade agreement is not to have a surplus with the country, to promote trade. That's the objective. But in the case of this Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement, there's a negative list. In the negative list, the India has been very generous for Sri Lanka, and it has given a large number of negative items for Sri Lanka, and it has accepted a small number of items on its part. So if we reclassify the data which Dr. Padhani had now shown, we find that in the case of the Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement, about 90% of our exports are within the Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement. Similarly, about 90% of imports are outside the Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement. For example, the medical doctors are driving this Maruti, Suzuki Maruti motor cars, they are not within the Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement. So when we reclassify the numbers, I have the table with me here. In some years we have a surplus with India, in some years we have a deficit with India. So it has fluctuated from deficit to surplus.
But Sri Lanka is going to benefit at the end of the day.
Sri Lanka has benefited because for two reasons. Reason number one is that we had been able to at least 90% of the export that we are making with India are within the purview of the Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement. At the same time, the goods that have come from India, which Dr. Padini had shown here, they are anyway the goods which have to come to Sri Lanka, because Sri Lankan people are using Bajaj three-wheelers, Bajaj two-wheelers, Suzuki Maruti small motor cars, drugs. They are outside the purview of the Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement. So therefore we cannot dismiss that the Indo-Lanka Free Trade Agreement has been a failure without looking at the disaggregated data. Unfortunately, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has not published this disaggregated data. That's the problem.
Kapila, a question to you. I wanted to follow up from Dr. Padini, but since Shamin interrupted now, do you not want anything from the international, let's say India, as we are in this example? Is the IT sector in Sri Lanka so advanced that we are close to the international community? We say, no, we don't need your expertise, we are content with what we have. Is that your opinion towards your sector, your profession?
No, not like that. Let's take that the Oracle or Microsoft, they have experts there. So in that case, if we require knowledge, we need to get the knowledge from them. Maybe training sessions or something like that. But it is not required to bring them here and get their services. It is not required. The thing is that it is not that difficult to pass the IT knowledge as some industries. So in that case, yes, we can take the expertise from India or any other country as well.
You're saying you can get the expertise, but you don't need a free trade agreement to get the expertise. Is that what you're saying?
It is not required, because it is happening. Our people are going to India and getting these trainings, and Indians are coming here.
But the Indian government
they are getting the trainings, and we are going there and doing.
The Indian government may not like it anymore. They probably want to send their people to Sri Lanka and for them to train them here in the country.
If they don't want to.
Yeah, if they don't want.
Yeah, then there are other countries also. That the thing is that what will happen with this FTE? Let's say that whether they are bringing only the services or whether they are bringing the employees here, both will take a. One thing is that they will take a part of the domestic market. So with that amount, that let's say that they are, we can outsource these network services and all these stuff. So
Kapila, the Indian IT sector is, according to the internet, is cheaper than the other countries in the region. Are you scared that the people, they will do the job that you all are doing for a higher price, they will do for a lower price? Is that why you all are?
It is not about the cost only. The thing is that Sri Lankan IT sector, we have positioned it in a level as you will get a quality product at a low price. So that is the concept that we are developed. So with that, we get all these investments, and we do our sales, and we have R&D centers in Sri Lanka for a lot of companies. All these things come here because of that, and it is really easy to recruit someone from here than in India, because in India it is really hard to find a good professional. Thing is that there are different types of universities and everything. So,
Mr. Kumarasinghe, you said that EDCA is a bad thing. Where do you stand? Where does the Ceylon Chamber of National Industries stand in terms of liberalizing the economy and opening up to trade? What is your actual position? Do you think that we should maintain things as they are now, or do you think that we need to move away from protectionism and open up to trading with us?
Ceylon National Chamber of Industries is a prime industrial chamber in Sri Lanka, and when the free trade agreement was signed for goods, we have not opposed it. It has been signed, though there are problems in that agreement, still we are not opposing.
But what is your position on trade? I'm not asking about any specific agreements. Trade in general. Do you believe that Sri Lanka can continue to grow in this way? Do you think that what we have now is sustainable? Or do you think that we need to focus ourselves as a trading hub in order to be a sustainable growth economy?
As an industrial chamber, we have to look after the interest of industrialists. So if you say basically a trading hub, it is a good word.
What happens? But what happens if the interest of the industries is not in line with the interests of the country?
Then it is a policy decision of the country, so that you forget the entire industry and then may open the economy and then say okay, trade. But depending on, there are some countries there is no natural resources, or like human resources are not adequate, so they can go with the trading concept only. But you have to have industrial sector and trading also on that is to satisfy the needs of the country. So you can't, for instance, if you take one particular industry and let that industry die today, and because the cost of production is in Sri Lanka is higher, and you import from other countries, and then on the day that the industry is not there, the imported product can be sold at any price. So there is no competition.
But Mr. Kumar, I'll give you not a hypothetical, a factual example actually. Let's take agriculture. The agricultural sector in Sri Lanka employs 1/3 of the population is employed in the agricultural sector. But the contribution of the agricultural sector to GDP is only 8%. Is that a sustainable industry?
If you look at, to answer that question, you have to, every country has food safety the requirements. Now if you take Japan has about 600% duty for rice, because they want to protect the industry for an emergency. If there is the famine in the world, if there is no food to eat, if there is your staple food is imported, then you are in trouble. So that is why every country, if you take Korea, South Korea, they are real buddies of US, but they are very particular about importing the rice and wheat. So actually I would like to draw one's attention to something that was spoken by previous speakers. If you look at our national economic development policies, now we are talking about not growing exports. And there we are some economists compare, or working for the government, compare Sri Lanka with Vietnam, and say Vietnam exports have grown, we are not. And also that's true, because Vietnam, they have developed the local industry, their agricultural industry has developed. But if you take 25 years of, as Professor Sirimal said, that if you take the last 25 years, the privatization or the foreign direct investments have come to Sri Lanka for selling into the local market. If you take the wheat flour business, 2001, our main wheat mill was sold to a foreign company.
When you refer to industries, what are our major industries in Sri Lanka, other than for, obviously in agriculture you have the plantation sector as well, including tea, rubber, coconut, paddy, then you have garments. What are other major industries?
So there are other industries like, I can't tell you.
Gem and jewelry.
Sorry?
Gem and jewelry.
Yes, then you have
also
dairy industry. Dairy industry has
Dairy.
not been developed, and even now flour milling industry is
So
held by
which of these industries are vulnerable if the government signs ETCA?
ETCA is different agreement. It is not good for goods only. It is for services, investments, and everything. So that is why it is a comprehensive economic partnership type of agreement. So it cannot be compared with only looking at the industry. But why we are telling the government to put our house in order first, and also rectify these problems in GATS commitments we have given, because when we sign agreements we have to have equal playing field. Now, you look at India. India is having a lot of protection to protect their own industries, but we are not. That's the problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar Singh. We're now going for a short commercial break. What is this agreement really about? Is it geopolitics? I'll listen more after this short commercial break. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Let's start off the third round with Mr. Samantha Kumar Singha, patron, Ceylon National Chamber of Industries. Mr. Kumar Singha, now we talk of Indian IT professionals coming into Sri Lanka and competing for jobs. However, it can work the other way around as well. Sri Lankan IT professionals can go to India and also compete in their job market as well. So there are a lot of positives as well. We will be able to send our undergraduates, graduates to India to be trained under this particular agreement in question. So there's always a win-win situation here, isn't it?
Do you know how many, what is the total unemployment workforce in Sri Lanka? It is about 300,000 people. If you take India, India's unemployment workforce is, I think, about 35 million people. It's about 1.5 times of Sri Lanka's total population. So in a scenario like that, do you think Sri Lankans can go and find jobs? That's one question. The other thing is, have you seen Sri Lankans going and living in India? Because Sri Lanka's living conditions are much higher. We are about $3,900 US per capita income country, whereas India is about $1,800, $1,900 per capita income country. So your living standards are different. So do you think people will go to India for jobs? That is the problem. If we can sign a the service agreement like this with a country like Germany or maybe US or UK, you can expect our people to go. We are at the moment we find a problem of finding people within our own country.
You're opposing this particular agreement because it's in India. India is coming on board. If it's another country, I would say, okay, fine, let's go ahead and sign an agreement.
In any case, we have to, as I told you at the beginning, there are certain problems to be rectified. The professional bodies have to be regulated in Sri Lanka. There are no regulatory mechanisms to regulate who is a professional. I think that there are other professionals here in this forum that they can talk to you about that clarification. That is one thing that has to be. That means putting our house in order. The other one is to rectify the issues in our GATS commitments, which is very disadvantageous to us because we have almost given everything, open everything to GATS under our commitment. In 1992, when BOI gave these investment opportunities to foreign countries, they published their BOI investment guide. And what was there in BOI investment guide as the investment proposals for that, those are unilateral commitments given by us. Somebody, for either by ignorance or by their lethargy or laziness, they have cut and pasted that particular one and put to this so-called GATS commitments in 1994. This is a major fault done by somebody. So that has to be corrected. Those are things that we are talking about. Then again, if we sign agreements with where free movement of people is allowed with countries where you have millions of people with unemployment, obviously it is not going to help us. So those are concerns we have. We are practical people. We are not theoreticians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samantha Kumar Singha, patron of the Ceylon National Chamber of Industries. We have to get our house in order, according to Mr. Kumar Singha. I now move my attention to Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Dr. Vijayawardena, in terms of getting Indians to Sri Lanka, it could happen through the BOI as well. You've seen this happening in the past, where we see Sri Lankan-based companies hiring individuals from foreign nations. So it happens at the moment, as we speak right now, whether or not ETCA is implemented. So having ETCA at the end of the day is not going to make a big difference, is it?
Well, Samir, now I think there's a fear among the professionals that the Indians will come and invade Sri Lanka, which is actually a natural fear and we'll have to accept that. But of course, in today's current technological improvements, Samir, we don't have to cross the border in order to provide our services. An Indian IT man can still provide services to a Sri Lankan IT firm. A Sri Lankan IT man can provide services to a German IT firm, because we have these BPOs and KPOs, and the people are not moving across the border. They are located in their respective countries, but they are providing their services to other countries. So therefore, there is no necessity for a person to physically move and have his presence in a foreign country to provide these services to that country. Because, for example, I work as a consultant today and I don't move around. My base is in Sri Lanka. From Sri Lanka, I provide consultancy to Germans, Australians, Americans, Britishers, and all kinds of people. So therefore, there is no necessity, and even the IT people, even Dr. Padinia's profession, in the future, a doctor may be in Germany, the machine operating the patient is in Colombo, and he is operating the machine from Germany. So there is no any necessity for a person to move out of the country today. So the fear is actually now, Mr. Kapila will have to now train his people in order to take up that challenge, not the challenge coming from the IT specialists coming from India and invading the country, because IT specialists throughout the globe can provide services to Sri Lanka. One good example I tell you, because Central Bank had this the RTGS, the real-time gross settlement system, introduced in year 2002. It was a British company that provided the services, and they were there. They didn't come to Sri Lanka.
Dr. Wijewardena, in terms of the BOI, right now, as we speak, people could be exchanged.
Yeah, I mean, it's an outdated mode, Samir, because we don't have to have it. BOI was the act was enacted in year 1994, and therefore, at that time, a physical presence was necessary. Today, we don't have to have.
Dr. Wijewardena, I'm going to ask you another question. I know you are also a head of a private university in Sri Lanka. Are you concerned about the students who enroll at your university?
In our case, Samir, there are Pakistani students, there are Maldivian students, there are students from the Middle East. They are there, but they study in Sri Lanka. Because currently, a student doesn't have to move from his place to another country to learn. Similarly, a factor of production, a worker doesn't have to move from one country to another to provide these services.
So, in your university, you have majority of them Sri Lankans studying.
Sri Lankans, yes.
Do you fear that they won't have jobs in the future because of EDCA?
No. There's no, because the one reason is because they get this British degree and they are employable throughout the globe. In fact, they are being employed not in Sri Lanka but outside Sri Lanka, and therefore there's no fear. For them, there's no fear.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Wijewardena. I now move my attention to Mr. Kapila Pereira, President of the Society of IT Professionals. Nothing to fear. Your time starts now.
Yeah, first thing is that, yes, most of the ICT professionals in Sri Lanka, they are providing these services in the way that Doctor has described. So we are providing services to the other countries, even though we are here. So that's what happened through the R&D centers and all other IT services that we have. It's a very small market in Sri Lanka, but most of the things are outside. So it's happening. But the thing is, right, living conditions, as Mr. Kumarasinghe explained, Sri Lankan living conditions are good. So Indians would like to move here, but Sri Lankans will not love to move India. So that's the nature. So they will move with that drive, and because of that.
Do we have the technical know-how, Kapila? Does our boys in Sri Lanka have the technical know-how to take Sri Lanka to the next level?
For example, last 9 or 10 years, this Google summer code competition, in that competition, Morato University ranked first in 9 or 10 years, last 9 or 10 years. So we are very much skilled.
So when we have bright young men and women in Sri Lanka who can take Sri Lanka to the next level, why is the government going ahead and signing an agreement of this sort? saying that it is important
I think you
to
should ask
broaden
from the government
economic
that question.
trade investment and technology cooperation between the two parties.
Yeah, I think it's not a question for me, I think, because who knows why that's the same question that we are having. Why government is going to sign this agreement while we have this expertise? There are enough ways to get the knowledge, and as earlier said by the professor, that we need competition. Yes, we already have this competition because we are selling our products and services to outside, not in here. So in that case, we are competing out there. We are competing, and what we are having here is the niche that we produce, as I described earlier, we produce a quality service for a low cost. But if Indian market does not require such thing, because they are looking for a low cost services, not for the quality things. Their main thing is not the quality. So in that sense, we shouldn't go for a FTA with India or China, but we should try to have FTAs with small countries and countries like the developed countries. So because in there we can compete easily, and even in small countries we will not get this issue of having very big labor market.
So you're trying to say that we can compete easily with India, or is it difficult to compete with India?
With the niche, we can compete with India.
So then why
developed countries?
Then why worry?
But this is something else. This is coming through our services, not in the sense that we are in a developed country. When we are competing in a developed country, our services, we are competing with the quality and cost. But India is competing with the cost mainly. They have quality graduates, but not all.
So the gentleman on to your right says you need not worry, but you are still worried.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kapila, for your thoughts on the third round as well. I now move my attention to Dr. Anuruddha Padania, President of the Government Medical Officers Association. Dr. Padania, unfortunately or fortunately, your organization is known as an organization that opposes any move that is proposed by the government. Unfortunately, that is. What is the real thinking and involvement of the Government Medical Officers Association, which is not even affected in any way in a program like ETCA? I'm trying to figure it out. I know one thing for a fact, that you all want to you all want to put your hands into economics as well to see the rationale behind the agreements. But why? You all are not even affected. Why are you all so concerned about it?
I think the first question is why we are considered anti-government, whatever the ruling government happened right throughout. The reason is we stand for what we feel correct, and we are educated people. We went through free education, and most of the norm is that you don't stand for what you feel correct, and we may be eccentric because the norm is, majority won't do that, but we do. So wherever, when there is a government, they think that we are opposing. But we are scientifically clarifying these matters. So I think to answer your question whether why it is not affected, number one, health is a field, I told you earlier, Sri Lanka can be proud of, because the quality health sector is delivered equitable manner, for the simple reason we could retain a sizable number of internationally skilled, accredited set of people in the country, and we could mobilize them to the periphery as it appropriate as much as possible to deliver equitable health care in the quality manner. So having done that, we are maybe an eccentric crowd. So therefore, if you do any structural changes without the necessary consultation and consensus process, without a scientific approach, we feel that ultimately, the end of the day, the patient will suffer. That is one reason. The second reason why we are worried is, nowadays you don't talk about development. Now the economists earlier were talking about the economic benefit through the low input, high output kind of a story. But today we are talking about a sustainable development. What is sustainable development? You can't take economy in isolation. You have to take the environment and the health impact of it as a total holistic care. So therefore, we have an academic obligation, whatever the trade agreement or whatever the project, in order to bring for the economic development, what is the health impact? So that is a worldwide thinking. So therefore, for these two reasons, we have an obligation to get involved. So, and let me take last these 40 seconds just to tell the 5 steps we propose in order to rationalize the approach what we are being critical at. Number 1, what we say is to evaluate the existing trade agreements from an economic point as well as the lateral benefit to the country. The second point is, please establish a national policy on trade agreements. Don't do ad hoc things like all other countries. Now today, this is the Indian policy, international trade policy, whereas we don't have anything. But even the ICTA draft, which was given to us by Honorable Malik Samaravikrama, says to implement without violating the national policies of either country, whereas we don't have a policy, whereas India has a policy. The third point what we want to raise is, before signing a bilateral trade agreement, put the house in order. That means the professional and the technical regulations and so on and so forth in place. Fourth thing is, the point you raised at the very beginning, what benefit we will get. Please ask the people who are proposing this to tell us, the qualify and quantify the benefit the country is going to have, as citizens we are going to get, and for our future school children, university students, you very correctly pointed out what the benefit they are going to get. And fifth thing is, which was really endorsed by the WTO chief as well, please ensure the basic principles of the process, to ensure the transparency, ensure the accountability of the process, because the existing trade agreements, when they are doing very bad to the country, there is no transparency, no review, nobody is taking the responsibility or accountability to these activities. So the simple logic what we are asking is, as citizens of this country, to go for a rational approach.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anuruddha. Because you mentioned about an educated crowd, and because you mentioned that you all have studied through the free education system in Sri Lanka, I am trying to figure out the rationale behind the protest or strike action staged by your organization, putting the people at risk at times.
Yeah, if
I'll talk about the rationale always.
Yeah.
So
I think if we can do things without strikes in the sense of putting patients in trouble, is the best. Now, as a president for 5 years, I haven't done any strikes for 5 years until last few months ago. A few months ago, the first strike happened because when the pension scheme was abolished by the government. For the simple reason is that because we are looking after welfare of the doctors, in order to retain them, a sizable number who will be able to mobilize to the periphery to deliver the care.
But
so long term it's a benefit.
But must it come at the cost of the people of Sri Lanka?
True.
Because let's talk about an individual who pays taxes at the end of the day to buy 250 grams of sugar. He or she is indirectly paying a student's fee, medical student's fee, when he goes or she goes and studies medicine. And then you all put that person at risk, because when that person goes to get some medicine free of charge, using the free education system, the free health system in Sri Lanka, just as you all use the free education system, they're inconvenienced.
Yeah,
what is the rationale behind that?
The strike actions by all other countries, when they are on strike, the doctors go home. Whereas
I'm not talking about other countries, I'm talking about Sri Lanka.
Our Sri Lankan strikes is, we are maintaining emergencies. What we are doing is basically the ambulatory care. The coughs and colds may be neglected. The rest of the things, residential care, say when you are doing 100 things per day, we may be doing about 95 things on a day of a strike. But that is to be done to sensitize these insensible politicians.
The 96, 97, 98, 99, 100 cases may be the most critical cases, isn't it?
No, the other way. We look after the critical cases.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anuruddha, President of the Government Medical Officers Association. I now move my attention to Professor Sirimala Beratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo. Professor, Is it a fight between China and India? Or is it China and Sri Lanka? Or India and Sri Lanka? Or is it a fight between who wants to be on top of which country? And is it coming at the cost of Sri Lanka at the end of the day? The time starts now. Is it about geopolitics?
I think for big countries in the region, it's quite a lot geopolitics as well. However, Sri Lanka also has a benefit, and if we look at the economic process, the development process of the country, I think we need to open the economy, and we need to open it not only for India, not only for China. We need to have a unilateral policy reform approach to open the economy for the rest of the world, so that our agreement should be with the rest of the world, not only with India. Which means actually through a unilateral reform process, we should have that kind of an agreement. What happens is that actually during the last many years, we have done a lot of ad hoc things, so that our liberal economic environment, policy environment has got distorted. So within that context, and we are opening the door to one or two countries, so that its disadvantages could be big. And to avoid that, I think I'm not against agreements, because as a second best approach, there could be agreements, and there are a lot of agreements all around the world and happening even during the last 10-20 years. But the problem is our policy reform process has come to a standstill, but we have done a lot of ad hoc things, distorting the environment, but we are now trying to correct that situation only with going with agreements with one or two few countries, and that is where the problem comes.
Professor Siddhartha Abiratna, why is it that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is so keen on Sri Lanka, and why is he so keen to push this EDCA forward?
Well, I think that we should ask from India.
No, he seems to be very keen. He's intending to.
A lot of people
Sri
talk
Lanka
about the geopolitics. Actually, geopolitics, that Sri Lanka is a very important strategically located country in this region, so that it is important. Even for our neighbors, it is important. So I think there is a reason for that.
Who is going to get benefited out of this agreement? Is it going to be India, or is it going to be Sri Lanka?
I think there are mutual benefits.
But who is going to be favored
Mutual
more?
benefits means India may be having some geopolitical interest as well. China must be having that as well. However, Sri Lanka was having some economic benefits out of which. But the major problem is we are putting ourselves in danger when we go into agreements with one or two few countries, and we need to open the country for the rest of the world, and then we can have agreements after we correct our situations at home.
Maybe other countries don't want to sign agreements with Sri Lanka.
That's right, because as at present, Sri Lanka is not an important country, economically at least important country, for any other country in the world to sign an agreement. That's why there is so much delay.
Then why not sign with India?
India has some other interest and China has some other interest.
Thank you very much, Professor Siddhartha Abiratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Let me open the floor for questions. Let's start off with Nadeem.
Thank you. Kapila, I'll start with you. You said that, it's a very interesting comment, you said that Sri Lankans will not want to go and live and work in India. I'll focus specifically on your field in ICT. A couple of years back I was in Bangalore and I visited some of the campuses there, the IT, not university campuses, like the IT company campuses there. If you were offered a high-paying job in one of those places, one of those big firms there, you wouldn't want to go to India?
No, I will not. That's a different thing.
You would?
It's about me.
No, would you or wouldn't you? Would you or wouldn't you want to go if you offered a high-paying job there?
I would not.
You would not?
No.
But for, let's say, the 1,000 extra graduates that we are putting out every year. But you said
then I would
but you
move
said
to
there are about 1,000
else.
extra graduates, 1,000 extra ICT graduates that we have in Sri Lanka every year. Don't you think that that avenue should be open for them as well, that they wouldn't be able to get? Because there are Sri
Usually
Lankans
that you
who are
will have a small gap between the number of jobs and the output of the graduates, because otherwise it's not going to work. The industry will not be healthy if otherwise. Therefore, it is not a big gap there, because it was with the data, it's 8,000 graduates per year, and we are making about 7,000 jobs per year today, and the 1,000 is not a very big amount compared with that. So it's not necessary. It is not a necessity.
No, you also talking about the quality,
and it is not. Yeah.
So now some of these companies that have set up their base of operations in Bangalore, these are pretty big multinational ICT companies.
Yes.
Are you saying that their quality is also poor?
No, they have good. Earlier also I said, I think they have nice universities. India, for the IIT and those universities.
No, not the universities. I mean, there are companies.
What I'm saying is, I'm coming to that point. So they have nice universities, and they are competing for those jobs there, and in other countries as well. So the thing is, are we ready to move to India, even if we are paid a higher salary? Because they will pay a higher salary for us if we are for the people who have the expertise here and the experience here. So if it happen, it is also a bit dangerous. And the other thing is, if someone likes to migrate, if he doesn't have any moral obligation of doing that, or they don't have kind of a set of values that feel that I should stay in this country and work for this country, then they will migrate. But they will try to find a nice country with better infrastructure, think about their children.
But there are several Sri Lankan IT professionals who are working for these companies.
Yeah, very few.
In high, well, but there are people who have gone there.
There are exceptions in any case. So we have to understand the statistics.
Mr. Kumar Singha, I'd like to ask you this question. It's a follow-up from a comment that Dr. Padiniya made. I'd like to quote from the WTO Mobilizing Business for Trade in Service Guide. It says, there has been much debate about sequencing or the order in which regulation and liberalization should occur. It is clear from experience that services should not be liberalized in developing or developed countries unless adequate underpinning domestic regulations supported by effective regulatory institutions are in place. Now, Dr. Padiniya...
You read it from which one, which document did you read it?
This is from the WTO Mobilizing Business for Trade in Service Guide from page 37. Now, my point is that the government, should it not enter into sector-based regulations before entering into a free trade agreement such as the ETCA wholesale?
Yes, Sonali, I am totally in agreement with what you say. Government must do this. This is what all the professional bodies are asking. I really don't know why the government is not listening to them. That is the right thing to do and right way to proceed. In fact, this Department of Commerce invited this particular director of in charge of GATS all over the world, the global director. He conducted a 2-day seminar in June this year, 27th and 28th, and even I was there the full 2 days to learn from them, and many questions were asked from him, and these were clarified. That is what Dr. Padiniya said. What you said is correct. We must put our regulatory mechanisms right. Now, if you take India's commitments to GATS, they very specifically say a professional going to India can work only for 1 year maximum, and that also extendable only for 3 months. And that professional also should be either in natural sciences or some engineering. That's all. Nothing else is open. But for us, we have opened it in such a way. As I said, it's technical. Many errors we have done. Like on one hand, we we under our horizontal commitments, we secure only 4 or 5 categories like very pawn brokering, coastal fishing, very, very small things. And we say any other thing foreigners can come. But on the other hand, in the sector specific commitment, we say we open only 4 sectors, that is GATT commitment. But when we sign ECTA or CEPA or whatever it is, we start from there. That is our minimum commitment. So therefore, there is a contradiction in that particular one. In fact, from Ceylon National Chamber of Industries, after that seminar, we wrote to the Director General of Commerce on 11th of July this year, asking her to rectify this, start negotiating with WTO to correct these errors.
But that still hasn't been done.
No, we have requested. I hope they will do it. And
but you are one of the main stakeholders. So aren't your responses, ideas being taken into consideration by the government? Is that what you're saying?
Government in the sense by the Department of Commerce or the Ministry of Honorable Malik?
The Ministry?
The Ministry, we have made representations, but we don't see them accepting those and putting it into action. They on one hand they say they negotiate with the stakeholders, but on the other hand they go and say, okay, who opposes, we are going to sign it. So that is incorrect.
Dr. Wijewardena, do you not think that such an ad hoc approach will lead to such things as us having to go into international arbitration in the event of dispute resolution mechanisms, which will be a complete burden on taxpayers' money?
Exactly, definitely. I mean, for the 5 steps which Dr. Padini has just mentioned, I fully agree with that. I don't see why the government has any reason not to listen to these 5 steps, because for us to do any kind of an economic planning, these are the steps that we have to go through. So therefore, if there is any objection on the part of the governmental authorities not to listen to the voices of the people who have also stake in this particular kind of an affair, I think it leads to lots of problems for the future.
Dr. Wijewardena, drawing your attention from EDCA to FDI, do you think that Sri Lanka needs lobbying companies further to secure foreign direct investments to our country?
It all depends on, because Professor Sirimal Labberatna mentioned that with all kinds of promotional work that we have done in the past, we have not been able to mobilize even $1 billion per annum in the case of these FDIs. And we need marketing. But we have to question whether engaging a lobbying company is the best type of marketing that we can do. Because these lobbying companies, when we hire them, we don't know whether they are being hired for the purpose for which the government has said. Government has pronounced that they have been hired, because in the past we have experienced that some of the lobbying companies that have been hired by the previous government, the purpose was stated that they want to clear the minds of the foreigners, specifically the congressman in USA, about the propaganda being done by the LTT sympathizers there in USA. But actually what happened was something else. So the best thing for a country to go for a lobbying company, it should be transparent, because one of the factors which Dr. Padini has been mentioning is that whatever the economic action being taken by Sri Lanka, it should be transparent, because at the end the government is using taxpayers' money. If the government is using taxpayers' money, any hiring of any lobbying company should be done in a transparent manner. It has been disclosed to the members of the public. People should know why the company has been hired, and as Dr. Padini has mentioned here, the performance has to be reviewed after that. Whether the money that you have paid has delivered the product that we had asked for.
Professor Abeyratne, one of the key issues that have been highlighted both by Dr. Padini and Dr. Wijewardena has been that there's been a lot of secrecy surrounding EDCA and the EDCA negotiations. Now, you're an economics academic. As an academic, do you see any justification for secrecy in negotiating bilateral trade agreements?
Given the kind of political environment that we are living in, I don't think there is a justification, any kind of justification for that kind of secrecy, and I also fully subscribe the 5 steps that Dr. Padini mentioned, and one of them, I think the last one, is about the transparency.
So why is the government being so secretive about this agreement?
Which areas the government has been secret?
Well, about this whole, because it's been exempted even from the Right to Information Act.
Yes.
Information pertaining to negotiations on bilateral trade agreements has also been exempted. So why is the government looking to be secretive? Because usually when someone is trying to do something in secret, it's very suspicious.
Yeah, we can't give a direct answer to why the government is doing secret things, and we can give answers.
But does it make you suspicious?
Assumptions and.
Does it make you suspicious? When someone is doing something in secret,
that's part of the problem. Actually, that's part of the problem, because certain things are not exposed to these stakeholders of any event, and even the EDCA. And then when the things are not exposed enough, I think that has become a questionable issue, and then lot of doubts are created, and so that it is coming under a lot of criticisms as well. So I don't think it is a right approach to any kind of policy stance like
Dr.
this.
Padini, are you concerned about this particular agreement not being made public? What you all have is also a draft of this particular document, particular agreement in question. Are you all worried as an organization, as a professional organization?
Obviously, yes. Answering to what you said, we had very bad experience, not personally to us. When I became the president, when I returned from UK, the cardiothoracic surgeons approached me as the president, the Association of Cardiothoracic Surgeons, and said there are 184 Indians working in 4 major hospitals pretending as consultants or specialists without the due qualifications. So where is the problem? Problem is, I have the medical ordinance which was established in 1926, 90 years old, and it's still in existence, and we have not reviewed. Here it's only recognized a medical practitioner, not a specialist. So lack of having a definition for specialists in this country had the opportunity for someone else to pretend that that person is a consultant and operating on patients, and the pictures are sensitive, I don't want to divulge. And whenever there is a trouble, when the patient is in trouble, the doctor gets vanished because he is not a Sri Lankan citizen. So what we suggested to the government is establishing a specialist registry and an evaluation procedure for a foreign medical specialist. These are legislations. We are not extremes on this line. Those are simple, because when I went to UK, that is how they evaluated me and allowed me to work there.
Well, Dr. Padini, you said that 5 years ago there were 184 surgeons from India who are not qualified to be surgeons in Sri Lanka.
Even by Indian qualifications.
Where are they now?
Actually, it had gone down to 9 because of what you said is our political and other kind of pressure. Ultimately,
so there are 9 people now in Sri Lanka.
9, but I think they have qualifications.
So are they qualified or not qualified?
No, these 9 people have some substantial qualification, but to qualify them to the definition of a specialist in Sri Lanka cannot be evaluated because this is not in existence.
Then why are they serving at these hospitals?
That is the issue. And when we want to establish this, we were backed by the Attorney General's Department, all the law enforcing authorities and the Health Minister, everybody. But somebody had filed legal action. I am not going to divulge because they are not parties here. And still it is in a court battle. This is what we are saying.
Why not organize a strike for this, Dr. Padini?
If you strike, the same comment you made will come to. That's what I'm saying.
At the end of the day, it's going to save lives of the innocent Sri Lankans who are paying money at private hospitals.
That is the thing. But it's a legal battle. We can't strike against the courts. So we have published this in 2012. This is 2016, yet to happen. And that is why the WTO chief says that when you are going to do it, these are 6 steps he proposed to go in the line. I think part of it was read by her just a moment ago. So we have to put the house in order. And to be honest, the doctors are the best out of worst lot. We have some regulations, at least up to a definition of a doctor, though it's not a specialist. But where is the definition for an engineer in Sri Lanka? Where is the definition for an IT professional in Sri Lanka? Where is the definition for a chartered accountant in Sri Lanka? Where is the definition for a architect in Sri Lanka? So this is the issue. There should be regulations in place giving that definition, and then for the technical categories. So we have to put our human resource in order to generate this. The last point I want to raise is, now the list of areas which they are going to open under this so-called liberalization, even your field is there. Entertainment, I don't know how to call it, either entertainment, recreational, cultural, sporting, audiovisuals, all these areas are going to be open without this kind of regulation. This is very dangerous.
Dr. Vijayawardena, given the present economy of the world, India is known to be one of the fastest growing economies right now as we speak. So having an agreement of this sort is going to be very beneficial for a country like Sri Lanka, because our professionals will be employed in India, Indian professionals will come to Sri Lanka. How do you view this development?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, India is a fast growing economy, and there's the potential for Sri Lanka to tap that particular fast growing economy. And Sri Lanka has a need today. And when we take all these factors into account, I don't see any bad thing about signing ETCA with India.
When you take a look at the geopolitical reasons,
there is always, I mean, the free trade doesn't have these geopolitical things, Samir. But when we do free trade, the politics doesn't come into picture. But when we have trade restrictions and when we go for bilateral trade agreements, they are always governed by the political considerations, the military and political consideration. So,
the thought made by Deputy Foreign Minister Harshadi Silva saying, ETCA is going to open doors for Sri Lanka. Are you in agreement with that?
Yes, it will open doors. Definitely it will open doors, because the main reason is that if we can tap the big market that is sitting to the north of Sri Lanka, it would definitely open doors for us.
Mr. Kumar Singh, opening doors, will ETCA open doors for Sri Lanka? It seems like a very good thing at the moment.
You know, there is a free trade agreement in operation from year 2000 for goods. So the market is mainly for goods, not for services. So because that is the big Indian market. So why we can't go to India to capture that market? It is true that India has given a very broad positively, so their negative list is very small. But what can we export now? They have excluded tea, they have excluded rubber, and like many products that Sri Lanka, and apparel, in that apparel has a 8 million quota, and 8 million is work for one small company, factory actually, 8 million pieces for a year. So therefore that agreement is blocked by India through these so-called non-tariff barriers. That has to be rectified. Now India, who is proposing ETCA or previously SEPA, says that it will resolve the problems of FTA if we sign this agreement. So that is where we don't agree, because there's under FTA provisions, there's enough provisions for India and Sri Lanka to rectify those non-tariff barrier issues in the FTA itself. So why don't we do that? This is what we feel. India is not honest in this one. This trade agreements with Sri Lanka. You know, India comes to Sri Lankan waters and rob our fish and go, steal it and go. What do? They give some excuse. So they are not honest with us.
An interesting remark was made by Mr. Kumar Singh saying, India's interest towards Sri Lanka is rather not that great. You see what's happening
not sincere.
It's not sincere.
Yes.
Professor Abhiratnam, when you take a look at India's activities over the last 3 decades or so, they've been involved in politics. They seem to be interested in Sri Lankan economy. However, you have the South Indian fishermen coming to Sri Lanka and robbing our Sri Lankan fishermen from the natural resources. Is India's credibility coming into question in an agreement of this sort?
I think as far as the history is concerned, and as well as the people's hearts and minds, as their feelings are concerned, there is something in what you said actually. India has before coming to an agreement, so close agreement with Sri Lanka, I think India should also show its honesty and its close relationship with Sri Lanka. And in the past, I don't think India has stepped in to do that as the way that we expect them to do it. So I think India has to do that as well. Because I think India is our closest neighbor and also the big market, so that it is mutually beneficial thing.
Thank you very much, Professor Sirmal Abhiratna, for your thoughts as well. Something that I gathered from this round is one simple fact. If India is concerned about Sri Lanka, if India is concerned about the Sri Lankan economy, stop the illegal fishing. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation, the final round. Let's start off with Kapila Pereira, President of the Society of IT Professionals in the country. Kapila, interesting remarks were made about EDCA. In conclusion, do you think that we shouldn't sign agreements, or is it just India that you're concerned about?
No, it's not about India.
So we should not sign agreements at all in terms of
no, I said that
exchanging of IT professionals.
Yeah, no, it's okay to sign with the developed countries and small countries where you will not get a big labor market. And the other thing is that we shouldn't be too fond of the size of the economy of India and the growth, because we have to consider the industry factors and the information. The thing is, for example, I will take a layman example, take the ocean. It's big, it's the India, but we have this small well, Sri Lanka. But as I described earlier, our quality is good. So now we are trying to pump water from the sea to this well, or from this well to this well to the sea. So in the sea it won't do anything, but to the well it is poison. So all the frogs in that well will die.
So we are going to be the frogs in the well for the years to come. We are not going to explore. That seems like a very negative comment for a country like Sri Lanka.
Why they should explore other places where the same quality is.
So we have to get out of the well.
Yeah,
we have to get out of the well.
Yes, that's true.
But we have to get out of the well from the right side. That's what we're trying to say.
It is happening because our professionals working with all other countries and even with India with the services. But that's not a matter. But opening this through a free trade agreement is the threat.
But will countries like the developed countries, will they sign an agreement with Sri Lanka? Will they sign?
We should try. I don't know. We should try. That should be the politicians'
when you have the closest neighbor, when you have the closest neighbor like India, which has a very good growth, which has a very good economic potential in the future, why not say thank you very much and give your hand and then accept that offer? Why not?
Yeah.
It seems to me that it may be like a selfish remark when you say that we should be inside a well, we should not let the frogs in the well jump outside. It seems to me that that's not the way that Sri Lanka should be or move forward. We have to always exploit the potential that is outside.
We should explore, but it is not India, because we will not move there. That's the thing. Because when I try to move to a country, I will look at all the other factors as well. Our children's education. Then we will check the other things like health sector, how it is. So if a person who is going to migrate, he will not move to India. It's highly unlikely. So what will happen is they will move here because our health sector is really good, our education is good, so all the things are good, then they will move here. And what will happen is that when they get this experience, they will move again. And
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapila Pereira, President of the Society of IT Professionals. I now move my attention to Professor Sirmal Abhiratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo. Economics is what you really know a lot about, Professor. That is your forte. You know exactly the bolts and nuts of economics. Given India's current status in the global economy, do you see a silver lining?
I think, Samir, you mentioned a little while ago that our service sector is about 60% of GDP. After all, through these agreements, and we are looking at trade in services, trade in goods as well as in services. So if India is growing fast, obviously, from an economic point of view, there is a good reason, very good reason for Sri Lanka to enter into that market also, because Sri Lanka will have the opportunity. In fact, in the future, for the next few decades, I think the markets in Asia, not only in India, markets in Asia are going to expand so dramatically, so that Sri Lanka, even though we don't do anything for ourselves, we will have better opportunities in the neighborhood. However, my point is that we are not yet ready, as I mentioned at the beginning, to exploit that market. Other than that, if we are, well, put it in this way, if we put our economy on right places, if we keep the economy on right tracks actually, and having address all the fundamental issues, it is a good thing to get integrated with the Asian markets.
Professor,
India.
given the current condition of the agreement,
Current condition of
the agreement in question, it is not transparent, the documentations are not out, no one knows what's happening. Would you go ahead and sign ETCA?
No, actually I don't contradict with the 5 steps that Dr. Padini mentioned, and I think there should be a check and balances to know that where we are actually moving. And I also understand that our regulatory system is quite weak to have an agreement like that.
Thank you very much, Professor Sirimala Beratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo. I now move my attention to Mr. Samantha Kumar Singha, Patron, Ceylon National Chamber of Industries. Given the current condition, your answer is going to be, we won't sign the agreement. So I'm going to pose a different question to you, Mr. Kumar Singha. My question to you is, what changes would you want to see in an agreement like ETCA? Because you have gentlemen here who correctly articulated that agreements of this sort is needed for countries to move forward. What sort of changes do you want to see or envisage?
This agreement is a very comprehensive agreement with 14 chapters in it, and therefore it is very difficult for me to just simply say, okay, these changes we need. But that is why we, from a broader point of view, we say these corrections have to be done first, then we should look at. And also before signing service agreements with a bigger population like India or China, I think we should now go ahead and sign a free trade agreement for goods with China, which is also in discussion. There is I don't know whether you are aware, there is another agreement called Sri Lanka-China FTA with China. That, though it is called FTA, it also covers services and investments. But I think, to our opinion, services and investment should be taken out from that agreement, and we should sign it only with goods at the first stage. And then parallel to what we are trying to do with India's ETCA agreement, prior to that we say, okay, all these steps to be followed. Those steps to be followed even before we sign agreement, second stage of China FTA. That is what we feel, because today China is a much bigger, higher per capita income country than Sri Lanka. Their per capita income is, I think, about $9,000, $10,000, and which is much higher than Sri Lanka. So therefore, it is good for us to export our products to China through FTA. So in fact, I have gone through the goods chapter of the China FTA. I think it is much better negotiated than India FTA. There are more technical issues like HS code.
So you would say that the ETCA agreement is very ad hoc and not well thought of?
I think it is something that is forced on Sri Lanka by India. Though our politicians say no, India never pushes it. Indian Prime Minister says no, our Prime Minister asks for it. I think that is not true.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samantha Kumar Singh, a patron, Ceylon National Chamber of Industries. I now move my attention to Dr. Anuruddha Padania, President of the GMOA. Dr. Padania, you brought in some interesting facts, the 5 points that you discussed with the WTO head and you presented to the government. What was their reaction like?
I think whenever we present this book, there are enough photographs with the President, everybody, and now we have gone down to the opinion leaders like clergy, and which is taken from a political angle. It's not, we are trying to educate the public, because the reason behind this thing, earlier the encroaching countries, invading countries were done through military means, but today it is, you can do it through trade agreements as well, which is done worldwide. There are enough literature. So therefore, this is, we consider, unless we study the matter and approach it, this can be economic warfare. So therefore, what we are not having an extreme idea, we are saying is we have to go with a studied approach. What you just a moment ago said, that whether you want an ad hoc approach or you want a policy-oriented approach. This is what the so-called good governance, with the real meaning of it. So therefore, first of all, we have to review the existing trade agreements and put that in order. Now, what you said is that Indians can come to Sri Lanka, whereas I can't go and work in India unless in the private sector or the government sector, wherever, because the Indians are much more protective from that point of view. So therefore, first of all, you have to review the existing trade agreements as it is done by a simple businessman. You have to do, though it is in the countrywide manner. The second thing is establish a national policy. Even African countries, they have a national policy on trade agreements. What do you mean by good governance without establishing a national policy? When we told that you want to establish a national policy, there is a bogus national policy is been now going to be placed very soon in ad hoc manner. To develop a national policy according to this itself, it takes time, and we have to get the consensus and the consultative process in order to do that, which is not taking place as it appropriate. The second thing is put in the sector interest and the sector safety, both by bringing regulations and other things are in place, as you very correctly told, and you even suggested me to do trade union action on that matter, because that is not only putting us in trouble but the citizens of this country as well. And fourth step is very importantly, rather than making any blanket statement that this is going to benefit country and the unemployment will be eradicated and other things are no meaning unless it is qualified and quantified how exactly it is going to benefit and when and how, and it had to be audited. Then the last point, as everybody had re-emphasized, the accountability, transparency and all these things which are requested by, and those are what we have signed in the WTO agreements, will have to be ensured. So these are the important points.
Dr. Anuruddha Padania, for your thoughts on the final round. Dr. W. Vijayawardena, you are not a medical doctor. No. Prevention is better than cure. What are the preventive methods that we need to take in order to get this agreement right?
The most important factor, Samir, is that most of the professionals in the country have a fear that they might lose their jobs and they will be invaded by the Indian technocrats and Indian professionals. To avoid that, the government will have to come out very clean and come up with a proper policy which would take the fear out of the professionals of the country. So that is the most important factor that we have to do. Otherwise, yes, as I mentioned earlier, even now, without people crossing the borders, they are providing their services to other countries, and we can't avoid it in this technologically advanced world. People will provide their services while they are domiciled in another country. So this is the most important factor. And about this, Mr. Kumar Singh said about this, we should not do trade with a big country. In fact, we don't do trade with countries, Shamir. We do trade with individuals. That's why a small country like Singapore has been able to do trade with USA. If we go by Mr. Kumarasinghe's judgment, Singapore can never do trade with USA, because the trading is done between two parties. Countries have all kinds of distorting policies and restrictive policies, but trading is done by the individuals. So we don't have to have a fear about this big country, small country fear. And even with India, we have been doing trading, and therefore in the years to come, for Sri Lanka to get the best benefit out of this Indo-Lanka economic and technology cooperation agreement, we have to tell the public, tell the people, this is the agreement, these are the benefits that we are going to get. As Dr. Padini said, it should not only be quantified, it should be audited also. Because that's the most important thing, because right now people might come up with certain calculations which might show that there are benefits, but it should be properly audited by an independent body. So this is the way out.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Jayawardena. Thank you very much, Dr. Anuruddha Padini, for joining us this evening. Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Mr. Kapila Pereira, President of the Society of IT Professionals. Professor Sirimal Abiratna, Department of Economics, University of Colombo, and also Mr. Samantha Kumarasinghe, Patron, Ceylon National Chamber of Industries. I got it wrong the first time. So Ceylon National Chamber of Industries, thank you very much for joining us this evening as well. Thank you very much, Nadim. Thank you very much, Sonali, who's an attorney at law as well. That's why you all were posed with a lot of technical questions with regard to the WTO and so on and so forth. And thank you very much, Chaturanga, for joining us this evening as well. One thing is clear about EDCA: there is lack of transparency and there is no accountability at the moment. Why is the Central Bank of Sri Lanka silent on EDCA? And why is the Ministry of Finance silent on EDCA? And why is it that the Ministry of International Trade is pushing for EDCA? Question marks in the mind frames of the public. Question marks in the mind frame of our panelists as well. There are advantages as well as disadvantages as far as EDCA is concerned. Sri Lankan leaders should show and display some sort of wisdom when it comes to EDCA. They have to get the technical know-how, the background from all stakeholders concerned, because at the end of the day, Sri Lankans should be at heart and their interest should be the priority. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. Hope you have a pleasant night. Next week, same time, same place. Till then, take care and God bless.